Hey, how's it going? Alex here from IdeaSpot. In today's video, you'll learn how to migrate a WordPress website over to a server running WordOps. Now, for this example, I'll use a Vultr VPS and I'm going to use Cloudflare for our SSL. So if this sounds interesting, then keep watching. The reason I really like this combination is using WordPress combined with Cadence theme on these Vultr VPSs is a really cheap and effective way of maxing out your Google page speed scores. So let's just run this through Google PageSpeed Insights before we start so we can see how it goes. So this is a Cadence starter template. I'm getting 100 on mobile and 99 on desktop. So pretty much perfect scores. Quite a nice looking page and quite easy to achieve. Check out my WordPress optimization video. I'll put the link in the description, but all you really need is a script optimization plugin and an image optimization plugin. It's not very difficult at all. Before we start, I'll give a quick overview on how this tutorial is going to work. So step one, we're going to set up a new WordOps site. We're going to be using a Vultr VPS to do that. Once we've done that, we are going to install the SSL certificates. So I'm going to manually take Cloudflare SSL certificates, upload them onto our WordOps site and set up an SSL config file for our site. So we're going to do that through WordOps. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the site that we're migrating, our existing website, and we're going to install a migration plugin. We're going to make a copy of our website. In this case, I'm going to use WP Vivid to do this, but you can use whatever you like, all-in-one migration or duplicator. It doesn't really matter. Then once we've got a copy of our website, we change the host file on our computer and point it over to our WordOps IP address. So this lets us upload our migration file onto the WordOps server, all while the existing website is still live, so we can do a seamless migration. So when we do that, then we can get into our WordOps WordPress install and we can install our migration plugin. We can restore the site onto the new server. And then it's just a case of pointing the DNS over to the WordOps IP address and reverting the host file on our computer back to null. And then we'll get a nice seamless transition from one server to the new server. So it's definitely a process that's definitely worth learning. It is a little bit more technical. We are going to be using some Linux commands. All the commands I use are over on my blog on ideaspot.com.au. I'll put a link in the description so you can copy and paste commands as we go. This is definitely more technical than our previous tutorials, particularly the Plesk tutorial. If you want an easy way to set up WordPress on Vultr or DigitalOcean or whatever, go ahead and follow that tutorial. I'll link those in the description as well. The main disadvantage with Plesk is you get a 3-domain limit on the free Plesk. So if you don't mind that limit, go ahead and use Plesk. If you want to get past that limit, you might want to learn how to use WordOps. So totally up to you, but let's get started. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to be using Vultr to do this tutorial. If you'd like to follow along and try it for yourself, there's a free trial link in the description. So that'll take you over here. And as you sign up, you'll notice you get $100 free credit. That's good for 30 days during your sign up process. And if you click that $0 deposit, you won't need to pay anything up front and you'll get a 30-day trial for free over at Vultr. So let's just go ahead, sign into our account and get this show on the road. First thing we'll do is head to this blue button and we're going to deploy a new server. Okay, so we're going to go with a high frequency compute and we're going to locate in North America for today, but just pick something closest to your audience. And for our operating system, we're going to go with Ubuntu and we're going to go with 2004. That is the most recent one supported by WordOps. And then we can go with the $6 one CPU, 1 gigabyte. You can use it as large as you like, but this one will work fine. And besides that, will give us our host name. I'm just going to call it WordOps tutorial. You can optionally add an SSH key, but I'm just going to use the root password for today. If you're interested in SSH keys, I'll link in the description to how to set up SSH keys, but then we're going to go ahead and click deploy. So then you'll get a success message, server added successfully. Let's go into our server here. So you'll just get a little message here about your server. It will take a few minutes to install and set up. So just give it 5 minutes and then we can go ahead and log into our server. Now to log into our server, we're just going to need the IP address, which is there, and the password. You can copy those with the copy tool there. And I'm using Windows, so I'm going to use software called Putty. You can get that for free from putty.org. If you're using Mac, you can just use the terminal. I'll link in the description for how to do that, but let's go ahead and copy our IP address. And then in Putty, I'm going to paste that IP address in there. And then I'm going to save this as Vultr WordOps and click save here. So we can basically come back at any time and highlight the one we've saved and click load, and then you can open that. Then we'll just click yes here, and we're going to log in as a root. Now we need our root password. So you'll find your root password is in here in Vultr. So I'm going to copy that one. And in Putty, we can just right click the mouse here to paste the password in and hit enter. And here we are, we're logged in as root on our Vultr server. First thing you do when you log into a new server is just update the update list. So that's apt update. And just let this run for a minute. So this is just gathering a list of updates that we can potentially upgrade our server with. So it's found 45 packages that can be upgraded. So we can go ahead and upgrade our server. So here we just type in apt upgrade and press enter. And we press yes here. And just let this go ahead and upgrade. We'll get a little progress bar here, so just be patient as all this installs. All right, now our server is all updated. We can go ahead and install WordOps. So that is our next command here. I'm just going to copy that out, paste it in, and go ahead and install WordOps. Now this part does take a while, so just sit tight while this installs. So after a few minutes, we'll get prompted for a username. So I'm just going to go with IdeaSpot and pop in an email address there. And then will finish up. So now there's a few more instructions on here. So we can enable bash auto completion with bash-l. So I'll pop that in there. That is just a little tweak to enable us to enter commands more quickly from our command prompt. So not that important, but it's just a nice little tweak. The next thing we can do is the WordOps stack install. So I'm going to copy that and go ahead and run that one. So here we'll see it's installing our stack for WordPress. So we're going to have MySQL, Nginx, PHP, all that good stuff that allows us to run a WordPress server. Now that'll just take a few minutes, and you'll notice that at the end you'll get a WordOps username and password. You can use that to access the back end of WordOps through your IP address on port 2222. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that info into my notepad and save that for later. So I'll just pop that in here and keep it safe for later. So now we are ready to make our new WordPress site. So the command I'm going to use to set up our site is this one here, wo site create ideademo.site. So this is the domain of the site we're going to be using for our demonstration, but your domain will go here, obviously. And we're going to be installing WordPress with fast CGI caching for Nginx. And we're going to be using PHP 7.4. So that's what our command is going to be. I'll also mention that WordOps does support a few different caching options. If you look at the WordOps FAQ, you can do Nginx fast CGI caching with what we're doing today, WPFC. But you can also choose Redis, WP Redis, WP Supercache, which is the free plugin, WP Supercache. So that's WPSC. You can use Rocket with WP Rocket and WP Cache Enabler. So any of those will work today. This is a very simple option, so I'm going to go with this one for the demonstration, but feel free to use whatever your preference is. One key difference from the last tutorial is last time we put Let's Encrypt on at this stage. This time I'm going to use a Cloudflare certificate. I'm going to install Cloudflare's SSL certificate manually a little bit later. So I'm not going to do Let's Encrypt in this tutorial. But if you're interested in using Let's Encrypt, go and watch my previous tutorial where I set up on Linode. But today we'll use this method. So I'm going to go ahead, copy this command out and go ahead and install my WordPress website. So this will start installing. This does take a minute, so just wait for this to install. So this is moving along okay. I think we're almost done. All right, so that just took a couple of minutes and we're all done. We've got our WordPress credentials here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these over and save them in Notepad for later. So there we go. We've got our username as IdeaSpot and the password is here. So that's what we can log in with a bit later on. Okay, for our next step, what I want to do is install our Cloudflare certificate onto our server. So for this, I'm going to want to edit some of the files on the server. So I'm going to be using software called FileZilla. You can get that from filezillaproject.org, and they have versions for Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever you like. So you can go here, download it for free. I'm going to go ahead and connect to the server. So FileZilla looks like this. We're going to go ahead and put in our IP address, username and password and port 22. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, we just copy those out from our Vultr settings. All right, so I've just plugged those in there. IP address, root password, port 22, and we'll quick connect. So there we go. We have connected to our server. What I might actually do here is you want to go to your file and just copy the current connection to the site manager so it's saved for later. I'll call this WordOps Vultr, and then just hit OK. So now I'm going to set up a couple of new files for our certificate and key. So let's go back to our root directory here. Just click on the / and I want to scroll to etc. here. And here I'm going to create a new directory in etc. I'm going to call that one Cloudflare. So create directory and enter it here with the right click menu. I'm going to call it Cloudflare with a / there and click OK. And it's going to create our new folder. I'm going to create some new files in here. So a new file, I'm going to call this idea demo -site-cert.pem. So you can rename that depending on what your site is called. So just the domain name and the extension there. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to do the same thing again, a new file. This time I'm going to call it idea demo site key. So that's that. I'll set some permissions on these. So the certificate itself, I'll set file permissions. So I want this to be 644, basically. Hang on, let me delete that. So everyone can read it, but only the root owner can write it. So that's 644. And click OK. And then with the key, we'll set the permissions here. That one's going to be 600. So only the owner can read and write it. No one else can read, write, or execute. So that's 600. So these files are obviously empty. We're going to head over to Cloudflare and grab our certificate and key and put those in just a minute. So here I am in my Cloudflare dashboard. We are under SSL and TLS. We've selected the site that we're working on, and we are under Origin Server here in our SSL section. So we can go ahead and create a new certificate to put on our WordOps server. So we can just leave the default here. We've got a 15-year certificate. We click Next, and this will generate our certificate and key. So here we've got our certificate. Let's just go ahead and copy this out. There we go. All right, now back in FileZilla, let's go to our certificate file that we made. Let's right-click that one and view and edit. The first time we do this, we'll get no program is associated with these PEM files. So we're going to select the default editor for text and always use the selection for unassociated files and say OK. It's going to download our file, and now we can edit the file. So I'm just going to paste in that certificate from Cloudflare there. Go ahead, press save and close out of that. And let's go and click yes there. And with any luck, that should upload. Cool. And back to Cloudflare, let's grab our private key. Go ahead and we'll copy this one. Again, let's head back to FileZilla. And I'm going to edit this key file here. So I'll just paste that in there again and save, close it out, and we can re-upload that edited file. So there we go. I might click refresh here. And there we go. We can see we've got our certificate and our key is in there. There's one thing we'll add as well is our Cloudflare Origin certificate. So we can head over to the Cloudflare article. I'll link to this in the description, but we're going to go ahead and grab the basically the Origin certificate. So we can grab this one. It's called Cloudflare Origin RSA.pem. We can just click that and it'll download onto our hard drive. So back in FileZilla, I've just saved that Cloudflare Origin certificate there in my C Drive tutorials folder, but you can save it wherever you like. And we're just going to upload that back into our WordOps Cloudflare folder. So all I did there was just drag and drop into the Cloudflare folder. So we've got our certificate, our key, and our Origin certificate. So that's all good to go. It's worth noting that the default permission on that looks correct already. I'll just check there, but it's 644, which is correct. Now our next step is to make a SSL config file. So we're going to go back to the root folder here, and we're going to go into VAR here, and then we're going to go into www. There we go. And we should find our website here, ideademo.site. That's our website we're working on. And there's going to be one called conf. And then there's a folder called nginx. And here we need to make a ssl.conf. So I've already got one in there. If you don't have an ssl.conf in there already, just go ahead, right click, create the new file and set up that ssl.conf and set those permissions to 644. Then we're going to go ahead and edit that file. So here's our empty SSL conf, and the file is going to look like this. Don't worry, I will share this content on my blog, but all you really need to do is just edit these certificate and key files to match the names of the files that you created earlier from your Cloudflare certificate and key. So all this is basically doing is pointing the certificate key and origin certificate over to those files that we just created in our Cloudflare folder. So that looks all good. I'm going to go ahead and save that one and then close it out. And I'll get a prompt to overwrite this file. So again, we can just refresh this and just double check. I'm just going to click view here and discard the local file and down and edit a new file. So there we go. It looks all good. So I think we're pretty good to go here. So now that we've got our certificates and our config all set up, what we can do is go back to PuTTY and we can do a WordOps stack restart. So that's WO stack restart, and we can check that this certificate is running properly. So the one we want to look for here is testing nginx config, and that is okay. So I think our certificate and our SSL config is running okay now. Now, messing around in FileZilla and doing all that was a few extra steps compared to my previous tutorial, but the benefit of doing it like this is we've got our SSL all set up already before we even point the DNS over, so we can work in the background while our old website remains live. And so when it does come time to point our DNS over to the new server, everything will be working fine. So we'll have our nice seamless transition of our SSL, and we'll also migrate our website so it all cleanly changes when we change our DNS. So that'll be our next step. Let's work on copying this website over to our WordOps server. So we're logged in on our existing website here. Let's head over to our dashboard and then plugins and add new. All right, and if we search for the word migration here, you'll find the most popular migration plugins. Now, we've used all-in-one migration before on the channel and duplicator before. This one is probably the most reliable, but the free version has a 500 megabyte limit. So if you've got a small website, this one works really well. This one is a little more complicated, but no limits. This one is also unlimited and it's fairly simple. I think we'll go with this one for today, WP Vivid. So I'm going to go ahead and install this one. But there's obviously lots of ways to do this. So just if you've used one before and you like it, go ahead and use what you like. I'm just going to try out WP Vivid for today. All right, now we're going to go ahead and activate. So we can basically use the default settings here and start to back up. The other way of doing it is if you've got a really big website that's sitting on a slow host, you might just do the database using WP Vivid and then manually transfer your files over. If you run into any troubles, that is. Usually you can just do your database and files all in one go and press back up and let that do its thing. So we'll see our progress here ticking away. Now, if you're on a really slow shared host with a big website, this might actually time out or become unresponsive. So that's why you might do just the database by itself and then manually move the files if you run into that trouble. But I think in this case, it's a fairly small website and we should run okay here. But later in the video, I will talk about how to move files from one site to another manually if you run into that issue. So stay tuned for that, but let's go ahead and finish this one off. So after a few minutes, that should complete and we can go ahead and we can see our backup is down here. We can go ahead and download that onto our computer now. So there we go. We can see that ticking away in the bottom left of screen there. Okay, now that the copy of our website has downloaded, what we want to do now is move our backup over to our WordOps server and restore it and get this website over onto our new server. So I'm going to leave our original site completely live while I do this. What I'm going to do is point my computer over to our WordOps IP address so I can work on the WordOps site while the original site is completely live. So to do that in Windows, we go to our Start menu and right click, and I'm going to search for Notepad. And I'm going to run Notepad as administrator. There we go. You'll get prompted for your Windows credentials, so just enter them, and now we are in a Notepad running as administrator. So now all we have to do is open our host file. So you'll need to navigate to C drive, Windows, System32 drivers, etc. Change this to all files and you'll find your host file. If you're using a Mac or something, I'll link in the description to how to edit the host file on a Mac, but similar process. You just need to get that host file open. And then we put in our WordOps IP address, and I'm going to point that to my website that I'm working on. So that's ideademo.site. So what this does is effectively allows us to work on ideademo.site in our browser, and our browser will point to this IP address rather than the live IP address, which is seen by the rest of the internet. This allows us to work on our website in the background while our live website is still there for the public to still view while we're doing the migration. So this is a great seamless way of performing the migration. All right, so we obviously save this one. In case you'd forgotten, the IP address comes from the Vultr server that we set up. That is the number that we put in for our IP. Okay, so now let's start uploading our website to our WordOps server. So let's go ahead and open a new incognito window, and let's go to our website, ideademo.site. And now we're going to get a security message because our domain is pointing to a different IP than it should be because we manually did that in our host file. So let's just go to advanced and proceed here. Here we can see we've got our new WordPress site from our WordOps install. So we can go ahead and log in here. So I'm going to go to WP admin here. There we go. Now our login is going to be the login details that WordOps gave us, and we saved those in our notepad earlier. So I'm just going to grab those, ID spot and the password there. So we pop those credentials in there and log in. There we go. Cool, so this is our WordOps WordPress install on Vultr. So let's head over to settings. Let's do a few changes before we bring in our website. We're going to be using HTTPS when we finalize this. So I'm going to change that now and go ahead and save that in. We'll get asked to log back in again. Same deal, we just changed our website name, so we'd have to go ahead and log in again. So that looks all good. The other thing, permalinks, I might just change those now. These are already on post name. I like to check that. But if it's not on post name, just change it to post name and click save. Now let's go to our plugins. Let's go to add new. We're going to add Vivid on here as well. So again, we search for migration. Here's WP Vivid. We're going to install and activate that one. There we go. All right, let's go here and click upload. And we're going to drop in our backup that we did earlier. So from my downloads folder, that is the Vivid backup that we made earlier. I'm just going to drop that in here and then click upload. You will see your little progress indicator there. So just be patient while this uploads. There we go. We got success. The upload has completed. Okay. From here, we're just going to click restore. There'll be a little bit of information about the restore process. So basically we're overwriting this website with our backup. So let's go ahead and click restore here. And are you sure? Okay. You'll see our progress progressing along down here. Then we've got our success message. And now we get to log back in. Now this is not our WordOps username and password. This is the username and password from our backed up website. So our original website username and password. So just make sure you get that right. Go ahead and log in. So this looks all good. Let's go ahead and have a look, see if we got what we wanted. Here we are. We've got our original website moved over to WordOps. So this looks all good. There's a little bit of housekeeping we should do before we finish this off. So let's go back to our dashboard and let's look at our plugins, install plugins. We'll see that WordOps came with some plugins bundled up. So Akismet, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to delete Akismet, and Hello Dolly. We obviously delete Hello Dolly. We've got Nginx helper there. The old website didn't use Nginx caching, but our new website is using it. So if we are using it now, let's go activate that one. So as we talked about earlier, it depends on what kind of caching you selected when you installed the WordOps site. So I used Nginx fast CGI caching. So I'm going to use this one here. Let's go to settings and we want to enable purge, and we can leave the settings here as default and click save all changes. And let's just go ahead and purge the entire cache now while we're here. Other thing that's worth doing after doing a migration is just resave your permalinks. In this case, the demo site came with the day and name permalink settings, so you could just resave it here. I always like to use postname, so I might actually change mine to postname here and just resave it. So that basically completes our migration over to WordOps. We are ready to point the DNS over to the new IP, so let's go ahead and do that. So over in Cloudflare, we are under the website we're working on here under the DNS settings, and we're just going to change the A record for ideademo.site. We're going to point that to our Vultr IP address here, save that in, and we can just go back to the overview and just do a cache purge here, purge everything. There we go. And now the fun part, we go back to our host file in administrator mode in Notepad like we did earlier, and we are just going to comment out our modified host file. So you can actually just delete the whole line if you want, or you can just add a hash mark that will remove the line from our host file. If we want to use it later, we can just take the hash mark out and reactivate that one, but go ahead and comment that out. Go ahead and say save. There we go. One other thing worth checking here is under SSL, under Edge certificates, just make sure you always use HTTPS is turned on so everything gets redirected to HTTPS. I think that should be on by default, but just double check. And now when we go over to ideademo.site, we should have our completed, secured migration done. If you find you're still looking at the old website, just go into your browser settings. You might need to do a clear your cache in the browser as well. So in Chrome, I just search for clear browsing data. You can just go ahead and clear your cache like that as well. So just do that if you need to. Great. Now that everything has migrated and we've confirmed everything is working, there's still a few more tweaks we can do. We can install the firewall for our server with this command here, wo stack install UFW firewall. So let's go ahead and copy that in and go ahead and install that one. So that automatically sets up our UFW firewall. If we want to check the status on that, we can type UFW status. So UFW status will tell us what ports are allowed and which ones are limited. So this is all automatically configured to suit WordPress. Next up, you can run package updates with WO Maintenance. This is an automated maintenance script, so you can just paste that in, WO Maintenance, and go ahead and run that. So that just took a few seconds. Now this is just upgrades and optimizations. All the actual security updates are done automatically, so you don't actually have to run this WO Maintenance very often. Maybe once a month will be fine for just keeping things upgraded. Now, upgrading WordOps itself, you just run WO Update again. About once a month should be fine. It'll just upgrade WordOps with its new features. At the moment, I've got the latest version of WordOps, as we can see. So every once in a while, you run these two maintenance and updates. Finally, at some point in the future, PHP 8 will be out and supported, so we'll need to update to PHP 8. It'll probably be something along the lines of WO site update, and then your domain name and update that to PHP, probably 80. They don't have this command yet, but sometime in the future when it's time to upgrade PHP versions, you want to upgrade your PHP version, but no need to worry about that for at least another year or so. Again, I will have all the commands over on my blog, so check that link in the description. So that's how you run a WP Vivid migration using the database and files. Like I talked about earlier, you can just do the database by itself in one step, and then you could just go into your hosting file manager like we've got here, and then all you need to do is grab the WP content and just download that. In this case, we would need to just compress it up into a zip file. You can choose zip or whatever here. It depends on what the file manager looks like. This is a pretty normal looking one. Go ahead and compress that up. If you've got a lot of content, this can take a pretty long time, so just be patient while this zips up. And that's all done. We can download our content there. Just go ahead and download it. And there we go. Now, once you've downloaded it, you just go back into FileZilla, navigate to your WP content folder. Here, in my case, I'm under var www ideademo.site htdocs WP content, and then just overwrite all your WP content with that zip file content that we downloaded. So uncompress it on your computer and then overwrite all this content. So after you've uploaded it, like I've already done here, you'll notice that the owner is set to root, which is what we logged in as. We do have to change the permissions here to match the rest of the site. You'll notice that WordOps sets up the owner and group as www data here. So we can go into our PuTTY and change that owner and group by SSH. So back in PuTTY, we just changed the folder to var www ideademo.site htdocs, and then we changed the owner by change owner recursively -r. So we're changing it to www-data, and the group is www-data, and we're changing it WP content folder. So hit enter there. So that only just takes a second. And then back in FileZilla, if we refresh our folder here, we'll notice that all of our owner and content is set to www data again, so everything should be all good. All right, congratulations if you've made it this far. Hopefully you've learned a lot about WordPress and performing WordPress migrations. If you found this a bit too hard, don't worry. There's easier tutorials I've done in the past, so I'll put those here. how to do a Plesk migration and how to set up WordPress using Plesk as well. So these are much easier if you want to check those ones out. But otherwise, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.